Hello friends, in Yoga Sutra 1.17, Patanjali told us about the state of Samprajnat, which consists of consecutive stages of mental absorption with physical awareness, absorption with subtle awareness, absorption with bliss, and absorption with the sense of I-ness. This is what is generally referred to as meditation in common terms. Now, from a practical perspective, this is the highest state we need to achieve in order to keep our energies high and focused so that we can maintain clarity of thought and do our work with maximum efficiency. However, after having lived an energetic, healthy, and successful life for a long enough period, a desire arises to see if there is something still beyond this state. When a baby is born, it first wants to walk, then as it grows, it wants to run, then to drive, and certainly the quest for more never ends. In Yoga Sutra 1.18, Patanjali tells us that it is very much possible to go beyond even the state of Samprajnat. He mentions a higher state of awareness, which he interestingly addresses as anya or the other, to demarcate it from the Samprajnat state of consciousness. Also, since it is mentioned just after the Samprajnat state, it is popularly referred to as Asamprajnat. Now, Yoga Sutra 1.18 reads, Viram Pratyaya Abhyas Purvah Sanskar Seshonyaha. Translated as, the other state, that is, which follows Samprajnat, is preceded by cultivating the determination to terminate all thoughts. In this state, only latent impressions remain. Now, to understand this sutra better, let us look into its constituent words, which are Viram, means to put an end or to terminate. Pratyaya refers to thoughts or ideas. The word has been used multiple times throughout the Yoga Sutras in different contexts and has been discussed in our video on Nidra Vritti mentioned in the Yoga Sutra 1.10. So here Viram Pratyaya means to put an end to the thoughts and ideas generated in our mind. This may seem a little impossible from our common experience, but the times when we have very deep sleep without any dreams is the closest one can comprehend what a state of Viram Pratyaya would feel like. Although deep sleep itself is a vritti according to Patanjali. Therefore, this state of anya or asamprajnat can be considered to be similar to that state where there are no new ideas or thoughts generated in the mind. The next word is abhyas, which means repeated practice, and is elaborated in the Yoga Sutras 1.13 and 1.14. Now comes the word purvaha, which denotes pertaining to something previous or penultimate. And here, the previously mentioned practice of dispassion or paravairagya, as stated in Yoga Sutra 1.16, if continued, culminates in the state of Viram Pratyaya. Therefore, these four words, Viram Pratyaya Abhyas Purvaha, describes that the practice to terminate all ideas or notion is the penultimate stage, and of what? A stage called Asamprajnat. Now, if we recall, the Samprajnat stage described in Yoga Sutra 1.17 consisted of 4 levels which have 4 different pratyaya or objects of support for mental experience. And in the stage of asamprajnat, all these pratyaya or mental experience gets terminated. And the dropping of all such pratyaya is brought about by the virtue of repeated practice. So then, what remains when this state is reached? The answer is sanskar. Now the word sanskar can be understood as mental imprints or subconscious impressions from previous experiences. Sanskar is loosely translated as habit, and we have discussed about it elaborately in our video on Yoga Sutra 1.5, where we use the example of how conscious and repeated practice of the notes of music considered as vritti or pratyaya mature as samskars, where the correct and required notes get struck absolutely impromptu. The next word is sesh, refers to remainder or latent. Now, through this term sanskar sesh, Patanjali states that in this situation only the latent sanskar remain, which are actually the ones condensed due to the singular thought to attain the goal of yoga, as listed in Yoga Sutra 1.3, that is, Tada drashtuhu swarupe vasthanam, which means to be established in one's own true nature. And the last word of this sutra is anya, which indicates the level succeeding the sampragyat state, popularly referred to as asampragyat, where only latent mental impressions remain. Now, it is extremely interesting to note here that Patanjali mentions abhyas and sanskar in the same sutra, because as discussed previously, we all know about how repeated practice of a certain vritti or a pratyaya eventually matures as our samskars. In short, this sutra on asampragyat specifies two things. First, the attribute which is the qualifier for the state, that is viram pratyaya. Second is the characteristic of the state, which is sanskar sesh. Now, earlier Patanjali mentions the 4 stages of sampragyat, where the pratyaya of each stage becomes subtler and subtler, which subsequently disappears altogether by constant practice. And this is the condition which is a prerequisite or qualifier for the next higher stage, popularly termed as asampragyat. Now, in the absence of any new thoughts or ideas in the mind during viram pratyaya, the chitta gets aware of itself. This stage of the chitta being self-aware is termed as anya by Patanjali, to indicate a state which is beyond any description or nomenclature. Even if Patanjali would have mentioned the word asampragyat, it would have literally meant the same, a state which is not known in its details. A beautiful analogy to explain this state exists, which says that our awareness is like a grain of rice, which is wrapped to its husk or our body. As long as the grain retains the husk, that is the active chitta with its samskars, it has the potential for sprouting and ripening. Now, when the husk is removed, this potential ceases. So, this state of consciousness, referred to as anya and popularly called as asampragyat stage, is that where the husk, that is the active chitta, has been removed from our being. Now, very interestingly, this state of anya is further dissected by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras 3.9 and 3.10 of the 3rd chapter as to how these latent or concealed samskars further become non-existent or wane off completely. Now, even though Patanjali mentions the attributes of such an extremely refined state of consciousness, such as asampragyat, the path towards it is all the more challenging. And even beings with such heightened states of consciousness might fail to reach the goal of yoga, which is tada drashtuhu swarupe vasthanam. And in the next sutra, Patanjali mentions 2 such types of beings. So let us delve into the next Yoga Sutra 1.19, which reads Bhava Pratyayo Videha Prakriti Layanam, translated as, for some, those who are unembodied and those who are merged in matter, the state is characterized by absorption in subtle states of Prakriti. Essentially, here Patanjali mentions those beings who have reached the state of asampragyat and still are not totally free from Prakriti. This verse has led to a lot of debate in the yoga community, and several leading commentators considered this to be about sampragyat state. However, we agree with Vyasa, who considers this to be a follow-up of the Yoga Sutra 1.18 and hence to be talking about the asampragyat state of consciousness. Now let us quickly look into the individual word meanings of this sutra to better understand what it says. The first word is bhava, which is derived from the base word bhu, which means to become. The word bhava therefore refers to birth or to the process of becoming. The next word is Pratyaya, which has been mentioned above in the Yoga Sutra 1.18 also. It means an idea or thought. It also refers to an experience. Now literally the words Bhava Pratyaya together means birth or generation of new ideas or thoughts. The next word is Videha, which has a prefix V attached to the word Deha. The prefix V indicates a deviation from the normal, and the word Deha means body. So it can either mean one without a physical body or one with a special kind of body. For example, tapasvis who can live without food and water for numerous days, or who can withstand extreme weather conditions without any clothes. The next word in this sutra is Prakriti, which refers to matter. And here it specifically refers to subtle evolutes of Prakriti, such as Mula Prakriti or Mahat, Buddhi, Asmita, etc., as per Sankhya philosophy. And the last word, Layanam, refers to merger or absorption. Therefore, the term Prakriti Layanam indicates those beings whose awareness identifies with subtle evolutes of matter. Now, it is to be understood here that both Videhas or Prakriti Layas are highly evolved beings who do not identify with the gross levels of matter. However, their awareness is still associated with some subtle dimensions of Prakriti and are not fully absorbed in Purusha. Although the sanskars left in them are highly refined, they still have not reached the state of Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which is the pinnacle of yoga. Now, this can be understood from an analogy of a burnt piece of wood. Even after being burnt, it still holds its original shape for some time, till the ashes wither away. The original shape of the wood after being burnt is like its sanskar, which is the last to drop off. Similarly, for yogis also, their samskars from past births remain after everything else has been burnt away, and they reach the final state of yoga only when these samskars also drop away. Therefore, we saw that in the Yoga Sutras 1.17 and 1.19, Patanjali gives a very vivid picture of the various levels of awareness one can reach through the practice of yoga. Now, in the next three sutras, that is 1.20 to 1.23, he gets back to the methods by which a yoga practitioner can experience these various states of consciousness. Similar to what we had learnt earlier about Abhyas and Vairagya, in the next Yoga Sutras 1.20 to 1.23, we will learn about other aspects of the path of yoga, which we need to acquire in order to make progress. As we will see in the next video, the first of these requirements is Shraddha or faith, without which any endeavor is unlikely to succeed. So till then, stay connected.